People know my voluntarist perspective and my limited to no government perspective, but I'm not a fan of having national IDs and making everyone have IDs. Like I'm not a supporter of that. However, if you're going to have a country in which there is voting, and you think that you've got a system structured on citizens should vote, and that's a good system. I don't see the argument against requiring ID for those citizens to vote. Like, how do you know who's who? How do you know, who's voted and that they're the right person? And like, that's not an unreasonable request. Like, should you have to have an ID? No, but if you want to vote, yeah.
Yeah. It's not unreasonable.
You don't have to vote. You don't have to vote. That's okay. But if you want to participate, yeah.
They've taken us to a place where they're forcing us to argue against things that are unreasonable. And I think sometimes we view it as, well, of course you should have to have an ID to vote and you should have to do it in person. Why should we have to make that argument? But they've been able to drag the conversation so far in this postmodernist, ridiculous direction that, yeah, we have to have that discussion. I think we have to set the terms of that discussion and start working on reframing it, because they've certainly framed it a certain way, right. It should be reasonable. Yes, we shouldn't have to have this conversation. It makes sense. You need ID. You need to prove who you are to be able to vote.
By the way, I'm not saying national ID. Someone's asking about that. I don't think it needs to be national. It could be local.
No.
And someone's saying fake IDs are very easy.
Yeah, but fake IDs. Trouble.
That's not even true. Fake IDs used to be very easy. Fake IDs are not like, a lot of IDs now have like basically smart cards in them. Like they're not that easy. A lot of them have like NFC communications and cryptographic authentication. Like I guess if you want to like choose the identity of a dead person, maybe that's kind of easy. But how many people are going to do that just so they can vote twice?
Yeah, that's the point. Make them jump through the hoops. Look, it's the same reason that Carter and I probably disagree on this, but I'll give you an example. Federally, you're not allowed to purchase a firearm if you've been adjudicated as mentally unfit. Okay. But it's up to the states to report those records. And so some states choose not to report those records to NICS. And I happen to think that they should be required
I agree
to report
that's how
them.
It works.
You agree that's how it works, but you may not agree that I think states should be required to turn those records over because, okay, for example, Virginia Tech shooter, that guy had been determined to be mentally unfit by a judge. But because at the time, Virginia was not a state that chose to self-report those records, he was able to legally purchase his handguns. And if Virginia had turned those records over, he would not have been able to do that. And I just think, people will say, well, he could still get the guns off on the black market. He'd get them illegally. He could find other ways to get them. Sure, but why not make it make it harder for him?
Right. And the answer that I would have is we choose liberty over safety. The goal is not to maximize safety. Yeah. I don't want a system in which a judge declares anyone mentally unfit. That is not a system that is good. I don't want the deep state deciding who's mentally unfit because, by the way, where this is headed right now, you'll be declared mentally unfit. I mean, if these social justice warriors have their way, there's nothing stopping the state from declaring people unfit. That's a loophole that like totally the state apparatus can use to just be like, oh, well, she doesn't believe in getting a vaccine for our COVID. Must be crazy. Check that box. I mean, that sounds crazy. It sounds hyperbolic, but that's what governments do. I mean, look at histories of how governments treat their people. Democide is responsible for more deaths than all the wars put together. Democide. Governments killing their own people. Governments do this crap all the time. So am I worried about a Virginia Tech shooter who's mentally unstable getting a gun? Yeah, that sucks. I'm way more worried about some random judge who can declare people mentally unfit to have firearms. That's just a disaster because it's every judge and it's all these judges with agendas. You know what? If everyone were armed on Virginia Tech's campus, he probably wouldn't have gotten away with much. Like, yeah, let the crazy people have guns. Let me have mine too. There will be incidents. It will suck. It's not going to be perfect, but it's freedom. And that's what I want. Freedom. I don't want to live in a padded cell because it's safe. That's my argument, I guess.
Well, I still disagree, but you are giving me something to think about, and I'll probably be thinking about it for a while.